Hi, ladies. Welcome back to Style Your Dreams with Keri Blair. I am so excited to be with you today. Happy spring to you. So today I want to talk to you a little bit. We're going to talk about mindset. And today we're going to talk about what lens you are viewing life through. And I talked about this on my to my email list the other day, but I wanted to talk about it on the podcast because I feel like this conversation is such an imperative conversation to have. So mostly in life, we just go through life and we're not conscious of every little thing that's going on, right? Like we're not conscious of that we're breathing for the most part, unless we stop breathing. We're not conscious to our heart beating. We're not conscious to a lot of things that are going on. We're also not conscious to the lens that we're viewing life through. So you are viewing every single thing that's happening in your life through a particular lens. So if something happens to you, you see it a particular way, but if the exact same thing happens to me, I'm going to see it in a completely different way, chances are. Why? Because I've lived a different life than you have. I have different past experiences. I have different brain waves telling me what it means. So no two people experience the same thing. Like you and I could be on a walk outside in nature and we will have completely different experiences. I might be, because this is what I do when I'm in nature, I look at the tops of trees and the sky, and you might look at the ground at how green the grass is or the flowers, but you and I are going to have a completely different experience in the exact same moment. Even if we were focused our gaze on the exact same thing, we're still going to see something different based on our past, based on our history, based on how our brain is wired, based on what's going on in our mind. So, I want to talk about what is the lens that you're seeing things through in life. And you could use an example of a camera lens. So, if we're looking through a camera lens at a particular subject, we see something. But if we change the lens, let's say we change it to a yellow filter and we look through it, we see it in a completely different light, right? Or if we change it out to a red filter, then it looks completely different. And the object's the same, but the way that we're seeing it is different. So I'd like you to consider that day in and day out, with everything that's happening in our lives, we're seeing life through a particular filter. And no one else can see life the exact way that we're seeing life. It's just not possible. And yet, every day, we want people to see life the way that we are seeing it. In fact, a lot of times we're upset that they don't see it the way that we're seeing it. And when they do see it the way that we're seeing it, what do we call that? Connection, right? So typically, those are what we call our friends or our spouses or our employees. Is we typically tend to surround ourselves with people who see life in the same way that we would see life, right? So, and not all the time, but a lot of times they tend to agree with you. I'm going to give you an example, which I used again on my email the other day. So I went to this hairdresser once and I had, oh my gosh, what a traumatic story. So last year when we were traveling in Slovenia, I had brought my converters so that I could curl my hair, plug in my iPad, all of those things, right? And I had an Apple converter and then another converter. And the first day of the trip, this guy said, be careful. We've seen people's blow dryers and curling irons blow up. And I had this thought, like, what does that even mean? So I had my husband look into it and he's like, no, you just need to use a converter. Okay, no problem. We've been to Europe a lot. So I use the converter and I stick my curling iron into it and I'm curling my hair day after day. And all of a sudden, after 5 days, I will have you know, I realized I was frying my hair, curling it every day because I wasn't using the normal converter. I was using the Apple converter, which isn't for hair products, hair tools. Oh my gosh. So let me tell you, I was traumatized. I was so upset. My hair was fried and it wasn't fried like at the ends. It was fried like by my eyes. So I get home and I go to this hairdresser, my current hairdresser, and I tell her like, "Oh my gosh, look what happened. I made a grave error. How do I fix it?" And she said, "Well, the only way you can fix this is by cutting off your split ends." And I said, wait. The only way I can fix these split ends, which is what fried hair is by cutting it? And she said, yeah. Otherwise, they're going to continue to split higher and higher and higher onto the shaft of the hair. And I fought this. I was like, there is no way, because if I let you cut it, you're going to cut little pieces like at the top of my head, and I'm going to look funny. And she's like, well, that's all you can do. And at that moment, I was so at a loss and frustrated. I said, fine, cut it. So she cut it. And just like I suspected, I have little pieces towards the top of my head. And I was so frustrated. And then I thought about it for a while afterwards, after I left, and I thought, wait a minute. That is how she was trained. So she went to beauty school. They taught her that the only way to fix split ends is by cutting them off. And so that's the only knowledge she has. And then I started looking into it and I started noticing, oh, there's products you can put on to seal the cuticle down and stop the split ends without cutting it so that it can grow out and then you can cut it. And there's different deep conditioning treatments and there's different products. And I was like, oh, so she had a lens that she was seeing life through and she couldn't see any other way. Like it really wasn't possible. Like she was so fixed in her point of view and the view of life she had. Nothing else was possible. Now, look at your own life for a minute. That's happening to you. It's happening in how you're interacting with other people, and it's for sure happening with how people are interacting with you. So what is the lens that you're seeing life through? And we could say that every argument that we have in life is because we're not seeing life through the same lens as the other person. And so when that happens, it's called fight. And each person thinks that the lens that they're looking through is the truth of how it is. See, we don't relate to it like that's just my point of view. That's just how I see life. No. If we related to it like that, there'd be so much more freedom in the conversation. We'd just share like, hey, here's how I'm viewing life based on my past experiences and my knowledge. And the other person could freely share what their point of view is in life based on their history and their knowledge. And you could listen to each other, but that's not what happens. That is not what happens typically on a day-to-day basis. People are interacting with each other, and there's so many different ways I could talk about this, but we're going to stick with the lens analogy. But people are interacting with each other like their view, like what they're seeing through the camera is the truth. They don't consider that they have a red filter on the camera. They think I don't know why giraffe just came to my mind, but they think that the giraffe that they're seeing really is red. If you've never seen a giraffe, you could possibly think that that animal is red. You don't realize that you have a filter on it. So I think this is a really important thing to stop and consider. So you could look at a disagreement that you've had recently. You could look at, it doesn't even have to be with someone else. Think about a situation in your life right now where things aren't going your way, you're stuck, you wish it were a different way, and it's like fixed. You can't do anything about it. So I want you to think about that situation and notice for a moment that you're looking at it through a particular lens. Just consider you're only seeing that scenario, that situation through a particular lens. And what if you could look through another lens? What if you could put a red filter on it or a yellow filter on it and see it a new way? Another way I like to talk about this with a lot of my clients is changing your perspective in life. So, so here you are in that scenario, and you see, yeah, I think the lens analogy is great, but I'm going to give you another one. Let's say here you are in that scenario, and I want you to get in a drone and fly super high up in the air, like maybe a mile high in the sky, and look down at that scenario. Now, how's it look? It looks completely different than when you're staring at it in the face. It kind of grabs us and it can be triggering. But when we zoom out a mile, we can get a different perspective. We can change the lens that we're looking through. And then all of a sudden, life gets simpler. We're not so stuck. Things don't ever have to be the way that they are. You're not trapped in any scenario. All you have to do in life, if you're feeling trapped, if you're feeling stuck, is change your perspective. Get a new lens to see that scenario through. One thing that I try to practice, and let me tell you, I fail a lot of the times, but at least I try to practice, is I have this thing that I do, which is not great, especially it comes up a lot with my husband. So my husband will say, hey, why don't we XYZ, or what do you think about XYZ? And my automatic reaction is no. Nope, not happening, not doing that, it won't work, whatever. And then he's so great about it now that we've been married, I don't know, 17 years, because he knows that that's not what I'm actually meaning. That's just what comes into mind automatic. That's my automatic response. And then once I think about the thing, I can always see a different point of view. I think that's one of my gifts, is that I can step back and go, wait a minute, what if it wasn't a no? Like, let me get in his world about this. I can't even think of an example right now, but about this thing he's asking. What if I could let go of my point of view and try to see through his lens? What would I see if I tried to see through his lens? And a lot of times I can start to see something completely different that wasn't available through my lens. And then chances are, once I can see through his lens, what he's creating, what he's committed to, my no turns into a yes quite quickly. Or there's some negotiation about it, like it's not a no anymore. It's a maybe, it's a, okay, well, how could that work? And more of like an inquiry than a fixed point of view. So I wanted to have this conversation because it's life-changing. If you really took this on just this week, maybe, and start looking, sorry, my phone is ringing, and start looking through a different lens, see what you would see, and see what you would see and see how it would impact your life in a new way, and see how much more ease you get in life because you're not stressed out and fixed on your point of view and seeing through your lens. And you'll start to notice stress will start to disappear. Your relationships will get better. You'll be happier and more free. But this is a lifetime of practice. This isn't a one-time thing, but I invite you play around with it for a week. And then I would love to hear your comments. I would love to know what you got out of this episode and how it impacts you a week later after practicing. That's it. I love you. Thank you for tuning in. As always, if you get value out of this podcast, if you could please give me a 5-star rating and review and subscribe, that's how we will grow. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Have a spectacular week. See ya.